drive. Tatum the finish. It is banner 18. The mission commanding is mission accomplished.
What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with another episode of You Got Boston. Finally, we have a win to discuss. The Celtics beat the New Orleans Pelicans 122-90 after a massive fourth quarter in which they outscored the Pelicans 35-12. Bunch of guys stood out in this one. Several Celtics players had their best games in green. Anfernee Simons puts up 25. Luka Garza with 16. We saw Josh Minott get his first NBA start and record a ridiculous plus-minus of plus 42. 15 points, 9 rebounds for him. So much to like about this game and so much to like about the way things came together. And we're not going to overreact. One win. The Pelicans are 0-3. They're not considered to be one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. They were without Zion Williamson. That being said, I think the flashes that we've seen so far through the first 3 games of the season and the flashes that I've been accentuating here on this podcast, where we're pulling out the positive takeaways, we're highlighting the things that are most encouraging. You saw it all kind of come together in this one. So going to talk about all of that in this quick post-game recap. As always, subscribe to CLNS Media, where all of these episodes drop. As always, I have coverage after every single game that I'm at. So far I've been to every game this season, including the 2 preseason games and including this 3-game road trip. And I have a very early flight tomorrow morning back to Boston, where we'll have more coverage continuing. So thank you as always for watching. Leave your comments, leave your thoughts below, even if they're negative. Sound off. Let me know what you think about this game, and let me know how you're feeling about this team through the first 4 games of the season. So I'm going to rapid fire a couple of positive takeaways, because there's more than one thing in this one. That's how you get a 32-point win. But the number one issue that this team has had so far this season is rebounding. It's been well chronicled. We've discussed it at length on the Garden Report. We've discussed it in our press conferences with Joe Mazzulla and players. And in this game, the Celtics have the rebounding advantage. They out-rebound the Pelicans 54-35 and have 16 offensive rebounds to the Pelicans 11. And New Orleans did enter this game as one of the less good rebounding teams in the league, although they were the 6th best offensive rebounding team. So, you thought that maybe would pose some challenges for the Celtics on the glass. But that being said, they are the ones that get the upper hand here. And it's no coincidence that they end up getting more shots up. They got 95 field goal attempts in this game, which is a great place to be compared to 84 for the Pelicans. And it's no surprise that they win this game. And the rebounding thing is going to continue to be a problem. It's not going to go away tonight. It's not going to go away because one game they out-rebounded an opponent. But you did begin to see some solutions for it. First of all, I'll just say I've gone back and rewatched all of these games multiple times. I've rewatched every offensive rebound that opposing teams have gotten. They've gotten some tough bounces. A lot of it is long threes that are, challenging to kind of remember that the number one prerogative you have is to get the rebound. But a lot of it is also a couple of guys that are now taking on a bigger rebounding role than they're used to. And so somebody like Neemias Queta, I'll give him a lot of credit. He has 11 boards in this one, 7 on the offensive end. Josh Minott had 9 in his first NBA start, 2 offensive rebounds. Jaylen Brown had 7. All of those guys are going to need to give you around that type of production on the glass. And I can't remember the last time I eagerly looked up to see how many rebounds Jaylen Brown had in a game. Like, it doesn't happen often, because ultimately this is a guy that has been predominantly a scorer and a defender and has become more of a playmaker in his career. And you're continuing to kind of see that. But he's not a guy that has been really needed to have rebounded much in his career. Queta has been a 3rd or 4th center throughout his career. Now he's starting against opposing teams' top rebounders. So individually, I always believed, and I still believe, that there is a level of skill and timing and instinct that is required to be a good rebounder that is beyond just wanting it. This team has wanted it. They have played really hard through the first 4 games of the season. But I think certain guys just got in a better groove on the glass tonight, and it's going to require everybody's efforts. And Queta's at the forefront of that. And I was really encouraged by his performance just in general, not just rebounding wise. He had 4 blocks in this game, which were massive, point saving blocks where otherwise you get a quick basket and they're very demoralizing. Instead, you get a transition play. So that was huge. He had 6 points in this one. I don't think he's going to be a huge scorer for this team, but he is continuing to kind of pose as a threat around the rim. And so I think this was a really good Queta game. Backing him up is Luka Garza, who had 16 points and 6 rebounds in 19 minutes. You'll take that type of production as well. And I'll add, Queta's 11 rebounds were in 22 minutes of action. So he was coming in and really kind of maximizing opportunities. And then the last guy I'll give a shout out to on the glass, I mentioned Josh Minott, but he has never started an NBA game before. He comes out from the gates and was just so energetic, and he just plays with a love of the game that I really enjoy watching him. And again, remember, he's on a 2-year deal, so he is somebody that could stick around next year and maybe into the future if things work. And so when we're thinking about this season, obviously there's the objectives of winning as many games as you can if you're not in the team camp. But it's also identifying guys that can impact the team moving forward. And I think Josh Minott is currently an early candidate for that camp. So big positive on the glass. As I mentioned, I'm not going to overreact and say the rebounding woes are solved. They are not. It is going to be a weakness for this team. We knew that as soon as the rosters were constructed. We knew that before the year began. But it doesn't need to be a weakness to the degree that it has been. And that's what was really encouraging in this game, that you saw that some individual guys performed better, but also there was a concerted team effort to really crash the glass as much as possible. And it resulted in something really positive. That's number one. Number two is Anfernee Simons. Anfernee Simons was the leading scorer for the Blazers for the past 2 seasons. He hasn't looked like a franchise leading scorer in these first 3 games. In this game, he looked every bit the part. He had in 32 minutes, he was the team's leading scorer, 25 points on 9 of 17 shooting, 6 of 13 from 3, which the 3-point shooting continues to be an issue for this team. When that comes around, you're going to see them reach another height. But Derek White was 1 of 9 in this one. Peyton Pritchard, 2 of 7. Sam Hauser, 3 of 10. So they really needed Anfernee Simons to find a rhythm, and he found one. And he was crucial alongside his 25 points, 6 rebounds, an assist, and a steal. And I'll just say, we heard a lot about his defense. It has not been perfect. But in this game, he had a couple of really big defensive stops. And through 4 games, I would not, from just being a neutral observer of this team and of this game, I would not say, oh, Anfernee Simons is a terrible defender and like this is a massive weakness for him. He has had moments, and he's a little bit more undersized than honestly I realized when he was first acquired by the Celtics, but watching him night in and night out, it's something that has kind of struck me. But he is playing really hard, and he really wants to contribute to winning. He talked about that pretty extensively. Joe Mazzulla said that he's been gracious in how he's accepted kind of a new role. Obviously, he's used to starting, and he has been coming off the bench after being traded by the franchise that drafted him. Like, this has been a tough sequence of events for him, and he has handled it really well. And Jason Tatum crashed Anfernee Simons' post-game interview and said, that's the Ant I know. I think everybody around him knows that he can be great and he can be a massive offensive threat. And if he's going to be on this team, which right now, I know a lot of the offseason we weren't sure what the status was going to be, but he's here right now. Like, you want to get 25-point nights from him as much as possible. And I saw after the Pistons game that I think in the previous 4 games that Anfernee Simons had played against the Pistons, he had scored around 30 points per game. That was his average. And obviously, that's not the kind of production we've seen from him in Boston. And I don't think it's because he's been in a massive shooting slump. It's because he just hasn't gotten the touches, the confidence, not forcing things. And one thing that I've learned to adjust to his game is that the shot that might look like, okay, he's kind of forcing that's his shot. So I'm still getting used to his shot profile and what's a good look for him and what's a force and what's a bad look. But you can't just apply the same standard that I might apply to somebody like Peyton Pritchard or Derek White. Anfernee Simons has a different bag. He has different shots that are good shots for him. And just as I know that Jaylen Brown turnaround, like, if you never watched Jaylen Brown play, you might not know that that's his shot. Like, I think some of the things we saw tonight is just him getting in his bag and him kind of getting in his groove. And if he can continue scoring the ball like he did tonight, that's going to add an incredible weapon for the Celtics team, because so far when Jaylen Brown checks out of the game, the offense takes a dive. And so you need multiple scores, you need multiple threats, and he is the perfect candidate because he's used to being the primary scorer. That's what he did ever since Damian Lillard got traded from the Blazers. So big shout out to Anfernee Simons tonight for having the best game in his very young Celtics career. And they'll need more of that moving forward if they're going to compete against the Cavs on Wednesday, which we know that's going to be a rebounding struggle. We know they have one of the best front courts in the NBA between Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen. Like, they're going to need these release valves on offense, and Anfernee Simons will be a part of that equation. And I think he wants to be a scorer. Obviously, that's what he's done his whole career, but I think he's also kind of learning to play his role and to kind of fit in as best as possible. And tonight feels like one of those clicking moments. It's not going to be like, okay, now you had a 25-point game, there's no going back, but he's going to need some breakthrough moments, and this was certainly one of those. I want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Prize Picks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. The hard-hitting football action is even better with Prize Picks. The weather might be changing, but the feeling of being right never gets old. So keep the season rolling on Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. I've been super excited to see the Patriots winning so many football games. I'm excited to see how the upcoming week of football goes. All you have to do is go look at your favorite players and look at what their call out and projections are. So I'm hearing all the hype about Drake May. You can select Drake May in your next Prize Picks. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. Play Prize Picks to get action on football in more than 40 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Prize Picks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. Want to pick more on Josh Allen's pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns? Now you can pick all of them in the same lineup, all only on Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. So I mentioned the rebounding, which I attribute a lot of that to Queta's production, but also to Josh Minott, who excelled in his first NBA start. And I also mentioned Anfernee Simons, who had his best game as a Celtic, 25 points for him. The other guy that I want to give a quick shout out to is Peyton Pritchard, who had 18 points, 8 assists, and 3 rebounds in this game. Entering tonight, he was the Celtics' second leading defensive rebounder on the team, and he was averaging 15 points per game despite shooting only 18% from 3. What I'll say about Peyton Pritchard is that I know there's a lot of noise around whether he can make this leap into being the starting point guard for this team. And those of you who are regular listeners know where I personally stand on that I think that there's no reason why he can't be a starting guard on a good team. Whether he is the primary playmaker is a different question, because in today's NBA, just because you're the starting point guard doesn't necessarily mean that you are the primary initiator on offense. And we have seen that on this team, as good as anywhere else. But Pritchard is finding a rhythm. He has been uber efficient from inside the arc. He is finishing around the basket extremely well. Floaters, turnarounds. He's had some moves throughout these first 4 games that I hope people are noticing and observing. And maybe I need to clip some of them and show you guys, because it's demonstrated that he is more than just a 3-point shooter. We know that he shoots the ball well. I don't have any concern about the fact that he is shooting poorly to begin the season, because he's getting clean looks, and he's talked about it, that he just has to stop overthinking it, and that it's about catching the ball right and taking confident shots, what he's done his whole career. And he's been an around 40% shooter for his career. So I don't really have an outstanding question around his 3-point shooting or his shot selection. I think he's gotten really good looks. And I asked him about it after the Pistons lost, and he pretty much said, you're watching them, that they're good looks. So to me, it's even more impressive that he has still managed to be effective offensively in spite of the shooting struggles. And so 18 points, 8 assists for him tonight. He doesn't get the MVP award tonight. There were other guys that had bigger performances, but quietly, he's really adjusting to this starting role. And when you look at the advanced analytics, when Derek White, Jaylen Brown, and Peyton Pritchard have all been on the floor for this team, they've been a very good basketball team. They have outscored opponents. They've run an extremely efficient offense. The problems begin when you start to lose 1 or 2 of those guys from the floor. And at times, it's 2 of those guys, because right now it's second night of a back-to-back. Derek White played 31 minutes, Jaylen Brown played 24, Peyton Pritchard played 31. Like, there are going to be stretches where you don't have 2 of those guys on the floor, and that's when the problems start. So to me, Peyton Pritchard is continuing to acclimate. I feel really good about where he's at. I think he's been an impactful defender. 8 assists for him, 1 turnover. His assist-to-turnover ratio is something that routinely goes unnoticed, I think, by average fans, that he has the ball in his hand, he's playmaking, but he very rarely actually turns the ball over. And that's extremely important, because we know that around the margins, like how important it is to maximize shot quality and to maximize shots and to not turn the ball over and give up transition points. And so he's one of your playmakers. He doesn't turn the ball over. Like, that's been consistent throughout his career. Even when he was coming off the bench in limited minutes, he's always had one of the best assist-to-turnover ratios in the league. So I continue to be encouraged by what I see from Peyton Pritchard. I think he's here to stay as one of the key members of this team moving forward. And we'll continue to debate it. I know people are going to question, should Anfernee Simons be starting? Should he be coming off the bench? To me, that's always the wrong debate about starting lineup versus not, because it ultimately doesn't really matter. We saw against the Pistons, Ugo played 18 minutes. He started, but he only played 18 minutes. So starting doesn't always mean everything. In this game, Anfernee Simons played more minutes than anybody despite coming off the bench. But in general, I think doubts around his ability to be one of the key guards for this team should be quelled a little bit throughout these last few games, because he had a slow start and he had a slow shooting start, and he was only 2 of 7 tonight. But he's finding ways to impact the game, and that's hugely important for him, and it's hugely important for this team because, as we all know, there is a shortage of talent compared to previous years. And so his role is extremely, extremely important. And so that's really good to see for him to kind of be impacting the game in multiple ways like that. The last thing I'm going to say might surprise you, because this guy on paper did not have a spectacular night. Sam Hauser, 9 points on 3 of 10 shooting, missed some clean looks, thought that he easily could have had 2 of those threes on an average night he would make. He was 30% today. Sam Hauser has become a very good defender, and I don't know if everybody else is noticing it because he does it in a very quiet way. In this game, he had a block and a steal, which actually is pretty nice to have that show up on the stat sheet. But a lot of times it's just the way he contests drives that just force misses, or he prevents a guy from exploiting what he thinks is a mismatch, because Sam Hauser does not think it's a mismatch. And as we think about this team, both for this season and moving forward, there's often this dilemma around like, okay, should we put Sam Hauser on somebody who can shoot, or should we put one of the bruisers like Josh Minott or Ugo Gonzalez, like one of these guys that can defend and kind of maybe cause havoc? And in an ideal world, you have both, right? But if you had both, these guys wouldn't be on the contracts they're on. They'd be starters, right? They'd be players. If you add Sam Hauser shooting to Josh Minott's rebounding ability and Ugo's defense, you have a great player, right? So there are limitations with these guys. And I think you're going to see Josh and Ugo work on the 3-point shot. They're young guys. Ugo in particular, only 19 years old, and I really like his form. So I think that's going to come around. But I think people look at that as a changeable thing. Sam Hauser has changed a lot on the defensive end as well. I thought this was an extremely impressive defensive performance for him. If you are a huge basketball nerd that has a ton of free time on this Tuesday, go and watch this game and just watch Sam Hauser on defense. You're going to like what you see. I started honing in on it during this game, and I was thoroughly impressed by what I saw. And so wanted to give him a shout out for, despite the fact that he only shot 3 of 10 from 3, which is not terrible, right? One more and you're at 40%. He made a huge impact in this game. And through 3 quarters, I was thinking to myself, they might be able to just keep him out there, just regardless of this whole dilemma between defense and offense, because he is kind of giving them both. And in this game, Josh Minott gave them both as well. 15 points on 6 of 9 shooting, hit 1 of 3 threes. Like, you got both from him. So as much as these guys can start to become more complete players, where you're not thinking about it as like, these are my offense guys, these are my defense guys, the better this team will be. So that was really encouraging to see Sam Hauser continue to evolve defensively. Last year, I think he was viewed by opposing teams as one of the worst defenders on the floor for the Celtics. If they still think that, they're not scouting well. He is not one of the worst defenders on this team, and he is not worth attacking, because he will hold his own and he will disrupt your flow on offense. So I enjoy watching teams do it. It's almost like they should know better at this point, but he's really held up well. That's 4 things. I'll say one last thing, and that's Jaylen Brown, who did play on the second night of a back-to-back, 15 points, 5 of 9 shooting for him, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. He didn't play most of the fourth quarter because he was in foul trouble, got a little frustrated at the official. But Jaylen Brown talked to us post-game. Check out that entire post-game press conference. He was in really good spirits. That's one of the happiest I've seen him after a game in a long time, win or loss, including last year as well. He is embracing this challenge. He is embracing the fact that this team started 0-3. I asked him about the angst among the Celtics fan base. He said, listen, we lost 5 All-Stars. I'm going to consider Luka an All-Star. And we are going to be patient. And I asked him, what is encouraging you about this team, despite the fact that you see, you lost a lot of talent? Like, why did you stay encouraged in this group? And he said, we're learning, and now it's just about application. And so he's really embracing being a leader for this team. He really is. And I think he's playing in a way that he's not forcing the issue. He's been efficient so far this season. You look at his numbers, they've been really good. But it's his presence around this team has felt very positive to me as an observer, as somebody in the locker room, just kind of watching the way that he's leading, the way that he's encouraging from the bench, even after he fouled out today or was sent to the bench with fouls. He was super engaged, super positive over there. And that's going to continue to be really important because Jaylen, like a lot of these guys, doesn't know much about losing. He knows all about winning. And so it's a mental shift for him. And from the beginning, from the first day of media day, September 29th, he has made it very clear to us that he is embracing this next phase in his Celtic career. You've seen that on the floor, but I think you're seeing that off the floor as well. So big Celtics win, 122-90. Celtics get their first win of the season. They're now 1-3. Head back home for a quick game. We'll have coverage, obviously, from TD Garden. I have an early flight tomorrow and a very exciting interview. So check out, we have a good You Got Boston podcast episode coming out. You'll see what that is. I'll tease that. That's all for now. Thanks as always for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you enjoyed the game, and we'll have more coming shortly.